My husband walked into the house carrying what looked like an ordinary gift bag, the kind you pick up at any department store with tissue paper sticking out the top. His daughter Emma had just left after their weekly coffee date, and he seemed oddly quiet as he set the bag down on the kitchen counter. I was chopping vegetables for dinner, barely paying attention when he pulled out what was inside. A dartboard, a custom-made dartboard with my face printed directly over the bull's. My actual face, taken from a family photo we'd posted online, now serving as target practice equipment. The room went completely silent, except for the sound of the knife in my hand hitting the cutting board one final time. I want you to understand something before we go any further. This wasn't some teenage rebellion or a joke gone slightly too far. Emma is 26 years old. She has a college degree, a full-time job, and her own apartment. This was a calculated choice made by a grown woman who looked at gift options and decided that turning her stepmother's face into literal target practice was the appropriate way to express her feelings. And my husband stood there in our kitchen, holding this thing, looking more confused than outraged, asking me if I thought maybe she meant it as a joke. The relationship between stepmothers and stepchildren has been complicated since the beginning of time, but somewhere along the way, our culture decided that stepmothers are automatically the villains. We see it everywhere. Fairy tales paint us as jealous, cruel, and vindictive. Modern movies either make us evil or invisible. Social media is filled with jokes about the wicked stepmother trope, and everyone laughs because it feels safe to mock someone who isn't a real parent. But let me tell you what it actually feels like to step into that role with good intentions, only to be treated like an intruder in a life you were invited into. I met David 4 years after his divorce was finalized. Emma was 22 at the time, living on her own, building her career. I wasn't disrupting her childhood or replacing her mother. Her parents had been separated for years before I ever appeared in the picture. I came into this situation believing that because Emma was an adult, because there was no custody schedule or forced interaction, we could build something based on mutual respect. I thought that maybe, just maybe, I could avoid all the stereotypical stepfamily drama because we were all adults here. I was so incredibly wrong. The first time I met Emma, I brought a small gift, nothing extravagant, just a candle from a local shop because David mentioned she liked them. She barely looked at it. She answered my questions with one-word responses and spent the entire dinner on her phone. When I excused myself to use the restroom, I could hear her voice rise slightly as she talked to David, though I couldn't make out the words. He looked exhausted when I came back. On the drive home, he assured me she just needed time to adjust, that this was hard for her, that I should be patient. I was patient. I was patient for months. I tried everything I could think of to build some kind of connection. I learned what restaurants she liked and suggested we go there when she visited. I asked about her work and genuinely listened to her answers. I stayed out of conversations when she clearly wanted time alone with her dad. I never tried to act like her mother or insert myself where I wasn't wanted. I simply tried to be a kind, respectful person who loved her father and wanted everyone to get along. But nothing I did was ever enough, and worse, nothing I did was ever acknowledged. The comments started small. Little observations about how David and I did things differently than he and her mother used to do them. Remarks about how the house looked different now, said with just enough edge that you knew it wasn't a compliment. She'd bring up memories from before the divorce, always when I was sitting right there, always phrased to exclude me from the narrative of their family. David would laugh uncomfortably and try to change the subject, but he never addressed it directly. He never pulled her aside and told her that the comments were inappropriate. He wanted peace, and apparently, peace meant I had to silently absorb whatever she felt like dishing out. Then came the social media situation. Emma started posting throwback photos of her parents together with captions about how beautiful her family used to be, about how much she missed the old days, about how some things were never meant to change. She did this knowing full well that I followed her accounts, knowing that her father's family and friends could see them, knowing exactly what message she was sending. When I gently mentioned to David that it hurt to see him tagged in posts that essentially erased my existence and romanticized a marriage that ended for real reasons, He told me I was being too sensitive. He said she was just processing her feelings and I needed to have thicker skin. I developed very thick skin over the next few years. I had to. The birthday party, where she seated me at a separate table from the family. The Christmas when she bought thoughtful gifts for everyone except me, handing me a generic candle at the last minute that still had the clearance sticker on it. The time she introduced me to her friends as that woman my dad married, instead of using my name. The countless occasions when she'd call David and ask him to come help her with something, then act annoyed and disappointed when he mentioned I might come along. Every single slight, every tiny cruelty, dismissed as me overreacting or her just being honest about her feelings. But here's what nobody tells you about being a step-parent, especially to adult children. You have absolutely no framework for how to handle this. If she were 10 years old, there would be parenting books and therapists and clear boundaries about acceptable behavior. But she's an adult, so any attempt to address her treatment of me gets flipped into a narrative about how I'm trying to control her or come between her and her father. I'm supposed to just endure it because she's his daughter and he loves her, and family is complicated. The emotional labor of constantly managing my own hurt feelings while making sure everyone else is comfortable falls entirely on me. David loves his daughter. I have never once asked him to choose between us or to cut her out of his life. What I have asked for repeatedly is that he set basic boundaries about how I'm treated in my own home and in our shared life. I've asked him to have conversations with her about respect, not as my defender, but as her father who expects her to behave like the adult she is. But every time it comes up, he gets defensive. He tells me I don't understand what it's like for her. He says she's still healing from the divorce even though it happened 8 years ago. He makes excuses and asks me to be patient and promises he'll talk to her later, but later never comes. So when he pulled that dartboard out of the gift bag, part of me wasn't even surprised. This was just the natural escalation of years of unchecked hostility. What did surprise me was my own reaction. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just looked at my husband and said very calmly that I needed him to decide right now whether he thought this was acceptable. I needed to know if he was going to continue making excuses for behavior that had crossed from rudeness into outright cruelty. I needed to understand if there was any line she could cross that he would actually acknowledge. He stammered something about how it was definitely inappropriate and he'd talk to her. I asked him what he was going to say. He didn't have an answer. I asked him what consequence there would be for giving someone a gift specifically designed to mock and humiliate them. He said he couldn't punish a grown woman, and that's when I realized the truth I'd been avoiding for years. There would never be accountability. There would never be a moment where he chose to protect me over protecting her feelings. I would always be expected to absorb the impact and stay quiet, because making waves would upset the delicate balance he'd created where everyone got to treat me however they wanted as long as nobody talked about it. The dartboard itself is almost funny in how blatant it is. There's no way to spin this as a misunderstanding or claim I'm misinterpreting her intentions. She had to find a company that does custom dartboards, upload a photo of me, place the order, wait for it to arrive, and then wrap it up and give it to her father as a gift. At any point in that process, she could have reconsidered, but she didn't because she wanted to send a message, and the message was received loud and clear. She hates me, she doesn't care who knows it, and she's confident there will be no real consequences for expressing that hatred in increasingly disturbing ways. What breaks my heart isn't even her behavior at this point. I've accepted that Emma has decided I'm the villain in her story, and nothing I do will change that. What breaks my heart is watching the man I love twist himself into knots trying to avoid dealing with reality. He wants to believe his daughter is a good person who's just struggling, and he wants to believe I'm overreacting to small slights. Accepting that she deliberately gave him a dartboard with my face on it means accepting that her behavior toward me isn't accidental or temporary. It means having hard conversations and setting boundaries and potentially dealing with her anger. It's so much easier to ask me to let it go, but I'm not letting this one go. That dartboard is currently sitting in our garage, and it's staying there until David decides what he's going to do about it. I told him I won't live in a home where something like that exists, even hidden away. I won't pretend this is normal or acceptable. I won't smile and nod and move on so everyone else can be comfortable while I'm diminished. Either he addresses this directly with Emma, including making it clear that gifts intended to humiliate me are not welcome in our home. Or I need to seriously reconsider what this marriage looks like going forward. Some people will read this and think I'm overreacting. They'll say it's just a dartboard, that Emma is entitled to her feelings, that I should be the bigger person and let it go because she's his daughter and daughters are forever. But those people aren't living my life. They haven't spent years trying to build a relationship with someone who responds with active hostility. They haven't had their partner repeatedly choose comfort over courage when it comes to protecting their dignity. They haven't been turned into a literal target and then told they're too sensitive for being upset about it. The truth is that step-family relationships require effort from everyone involved, not just the step-parent. Adult children don't get a free pass to treat their parent's partner with contempt just because they have feelings about the divorce. Parents don't get to avoid hard conversations with their kids just because those conversations are uncomfortable. And spouses need to stand up for each other even when it means disappointing someone they love. None of that has happened in my situation, and a dartboard with my face on it is simply the most obvious symptom of a much larger problem. I don't know how this story ends yet. David and I are supposed to talk tonight after he's had time to think. I'm hoping he'll surprise me, that he'll recognize how serious this is and take meaningful action. But I'm also preparing myself for more excuses, more requests for patience, more explanations about how Emma is going through something and I need to understand. If that's what happens, I'll have some very difficult decisions to make about my future and whether I can stay in a relationship where I'm expected to accept being treated as less than human. What I do know is that I deserve better than this. I deserve a partner who won't stand in the kitchen holding a dartboard with my face on it while trying to find ways to minimize what it represents. I deserve to live without constantly managing someone else's adult child's feelings at the expense of my own well-being. And I deserve to be treated with basic respect and dignity in my own home and my own marriage. That shouldn't be too much to ask.